Hey there, everybody. Mazrock here, and welcome to my Zero to Hero F tier Assassination Rogue Challenge, Episode 1. Now, you might be asking, why Assassination Rogue? Well, that was voted on by my Twitch viewers, the people on stream. So come on by, check me out. There's a Twitch link down below. And I've never really done a Keystone Zero to Hero challenge before, so we wanted to make it difficult. We wanted to do something I hadn't played before. Tanks were off the board. I played most healers already to a point. I think Priest is the only one, but Priests were really not many people were digging Priest for this challenge in Twitch chat. So it came down to a couple, and it was Enhancement Shaman and Rogue, and it was decided on Rogue. And not only Rogue, but Assassination Rogue. And that is because, well, have you seen many Assassination Rogues in Mythic Plus? Let alone have you seen many Rogues in Mythic Plus, but have you seen many Rogues in general? So, that's where we landed on here. So, over the course of Saturday, the 5th of August, I spent much of the morning and the rest of the day during the Great Push. I did record everything just in case if anything happened. Leveling up, I already had the Rogue at 60 from Shadowlands, so it was just a matter of getting from 60 to 70. And there was no boosting or anything here. It was just natty leveling and questing, which definitely took a while, but yeah. So, perfect. We hit 70. Now we needed some at least starter gear, right? Before we got into our first Mythic Plus, we needed to get some sort of setup going in. So I started farming time rifts like crazy. Every hour on the hour. I mean, I was watching the Great Push at the same time, so it's not like I was devoting every single second of my time to getting some starter gear. It was like, okay, cool. Do a heroic dungeon here or whatever. And we opted to do the 5 heroic dungeon quests, time rifts, the Zeralek Cavern starting zone as well. But most of the starter gear kind of came from the Zeralek Cavern starting zone. A little bit of crafting as well, because during the little bit of questing, you gain the Whelpling Crest, and then you can make enchanted Whelpling Crest, the enchanted Whelpling Crest, those things, which can make blue gear craftable into 408. So it's very, very cheap. So for the cost of just a couple, I think the Resonant Crystal being around 100 gold piece, gold cost for that is probably the most expensive, and then it's like 20 resilient leather and like 5 adamant scales or something. You can take that basic blue 343 piece that, any starter leather worker can make, and this is doable across all specs, by the way, and make it 408. So we immediately started targeting things that weren't tier pieces there, right? Boots, bracers, belts, things like that. With our first sparks, we made a weapon because we thought that was kind of pretty smart. Try and get a weapon because obviously a weapon. 424 neck because most necks are pretty much all crafted now. There are some Bis necks that you can try and farm out, but we needed quick stuff fast to be able to get some stats that we needed. So we started spending some sparks there on 424 gear, some 408 gear, and some timer gear as well. Now, where I targeted my paracausal flakes was with the trinkets, actually, that were there, believe it or not. The trinkets in the time rifts are kind of decent. They're okay. But the problem is Rogue doesn't have a whole lot of great options to begin with. And some of them are kind of like hard grind farms. So that's not something we're going to, farm freehold until you get Harlan's loaded dice. Yeah, probably not going to happen. Right? The whole goal of this is to not have to do that, but grind your way up. So I ended on the Doomhammer one and the little elemental one from the Fel. The Sulphurous one, the fire one, I also got that one, but I didn't really like the way that it goes. I'm going to post what trinkets those are up above so you can see. But I actually and I'm still rocking at least one of those trinkets because I was lucky-ish enough. And I did get a Mark of Dargul, but that's a quick little spoiler for you. Now, throughout all of the farming the time rifts, we went into Raid Finder and we did a full clear there, and I actually got very little I got a pair of shoulders that ended up getting, that I was able to catalyze, and we kind of just went from there, right? That's kind of where it went. But now we go into Mythic Plus, and our first key, a +2 freehold. And right off the bat, holy crap, I was really, really surprised at how decent Assassination could perform. And I can definitely see its potential in the hands of somebody that, well, knows what they're doing, because I straight up do not play much Rogue. No, that's like, what is this? This is good. Are you? I'm level 200, and when I have fucking indiscriminate carnage, I'm literally bursting for 160k at item level 400. Bad stats, bad everything. I should not be allowed to do this. I played for about a month in Shadowlands, and that wasn't even my main. It was just, here's something for fun. So obviously it's like, okay, whoa, what is this? What's going on? But one of the changes coming in from Shadowlands to Dragonflight about Assassination Rogue that has made the spec incredibly fun for Mythic Plus, for the difference from what I've done for both, is indiscriminate carnage. You press this, and then your next Garrote and your next Rupture now cast on 8 targets. And if you are casting this from stealth, Garrote deals more damage, of course, because it always deals more damage when cast from stealth, but it also silences the enemy. So I've noticed that when I'm kind of doing these pulls and, I'm following the tank, I'm using tricks of the trade, helping them get threat, things just group up a lot nicer for the tanks if I can time my opener just right and just get some quick silences off and get everything grouped up. And that's a little bit of group utility that I think goes very undervalued for rogues, and I think could have helped a lot. But man, some of these tanks going into Mythic Plus, holy jeez. But we get through the 2 freeholds, got our first little bit of IO, and now we move forward. Upgrading that +2 freehold into a +5 Underrot, we put our key back into the pug system, back in queue, and we see what we can get. And I am quickly reminded of how hunters can be a floor-inspectingly good time in lower-level keys. I don't understand why that's the case. Probably because it's a spec more that has more newer player-friendly. Not sure. But that does happen. But for those of you going into Underrot for the first time, on Kragmaw, when you see all of the little red, maggots on the ground and everybody running around, that is a very good time for you to be doing the same and running over them. Because if you do not run over them, they spawn blood ticks. And in higher level keys, those things will absolutely wreck your tank. And it is everyone's responsibility to get as many of them as possible. And if you're a Beastmaster Hunter, you're not losing any damage by moving and moving and doing that. So please help out, do that. One of the nice things that I really liked about Assassination Rogue was, as long as I set up all my bleeds and poisons right before that was happening, I could usually go get everything and have very minimal damage loss along the way. That's a little thing along the way that I actually really did like about the spec, and that I have started to like. Some of the problems that I noticed early on in this Underrot was I have a big problem, or had a big problem, we're going to be going into this a little bit later, with keeping Slice and Dice up. Especially in AoE packs. It's very easy to do so in single target because you are prioritizing your combo points on Envenom, which give you Slice and Dice uptime. And what Slice and Dice is increases your attack speed by 50%, so it's a good maintenance buff to have. But in AoE packs that last a while, I was tending to Fan of Knives and Crimson Tempest a lot, and not upkeeping my Slice and Dice, and just letting it fall off, especially when I first give myself the buff, and then I would just Fan of Knives and Crimson Tempest until my Slice and Dice would fall off again. I'm like, that's not what I want to be doing. So I've had to start learning to weave, I do a Fan of Knives, a Crimson Tempest, Fan of Knives, and Venom, and kind of work that around. And I found, now that I've noticed that a lot more, I'm having a lot more fun with the spec, kind of playing around that. Ending the Underrot, I actually ended up with a Haste Mastery Socketed Ring. Now, the main stats that Assassination Rogue wants to go for is obviously Crit Mastery, but my Haste was pretty low enough, or is pretty low enough, where putting on this ring is not going to be the worst decision in the world, because you obviously don't want Brewmaster levels of haste. So I'm still wearing the ring as recording this now. plus 2ing that plus 5 Underrot. That's correct. The Hunter Deaths cost us enough time where we only plus 2'd that key. That became a plus 7 Neltharian's Lair. Sorry, the two kind of slip the tongue sometimes. And we go back into the Pug queue, and now we're at the point where we are definitely just waiting for healers. So what I did to try and maybe get a healer come in was, put in a note, plus 7 Neltharian's Lair. We love healers. But that didn't quite work. But what did work was me literally telling chat, hey guys, I'm going to go get myself a beverage, and a healer's going to pop in. Alright, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go refill my drink, and a healer's going to come in. Into a queue, and ding! Healer pops in the queue. He did stick around long enough for me to come back, for me to accept him in, and we got a shaman for our plus 7 Neltharian's Lair. Now, one of the things that I find funny in Neltharian's Lair whenever it happens is when somebody overshoots the jump off the waterfall and splats right before Rockmora. But it's only a death. Didn't cost us anything but 5 seconds, and we had a good laugh. Now, a 7 Tyrannical is where, if you do not have the item level to kind of overgear it, mechanics can start quickly killing you. And unfortunately for our tank, he did not know, or they did not know, that the Shatter Ground, the Crystalline Ground, the big AoE, is not something you want to be moving in, especially if you don't have the health. And he quickly died. Now, this was in the last few percent of Rockmora, so we ended up downing him with, again, very, very little cost and a couple of laughs. Rest of the dungeon goes pretty okay. It's a 7, it's a learning dungeon. But man, when we get to Dargul, this is where things start getting very bad very quickly. And that is honestly all on the tank. Dargul is absolutely a tank fight. DPS have, like, one major role, and that's swap to the ad, make sure the thing dies, right? You can passively cleave it, whatever. As long as it dies before it starts moving around and does its big AoE, fine. Tank positioning on this boss is truly what matters here, and never aiming the landslide at the crystal spike, so people always have something to hide. And if you do not aim the boss, and for you that don't know, Magma Sculptor is the cast that summons the ad, and he always spawns it to his left hand. So your right when the boss is facing you, his left hand. And as long as you have his left hand around that general crystal spike circle, the ad will come into the stun. And the reason why this is important is because he takes extra damage while they're in that stun. So it's very important for you, the tank, to avoid all of the landslides from your party, because those landslides literally one-shot your party, especially in higher keys. And I don't even mean plus 20 pluses. That landslide will one-shot people in 14, 15, 16s. It does a lot of damage, especially to some of the squishier classes out there, right? And if they're not prepared for it. Now, there is a way to go about it. So the first one's pretty easy, right? The segment is Crystal Spikes, Magma Sculptor, Landslide. But after he does his lava crash molten thing where you have to hide behind the Crystal Spike, the next sequence is a little bit different. Okay? It goes Crystal Spikes, Landslide, Molten Crash, which is the big tank, buster, and then Magma Sculptor. So the thing that you have to do is quickly move into spot after that landslide. And if you can start getting the rhythm of this fight, it's going to go a lot smoother for you. But DPS, do make sure that you're DPSing down that ad. Timing that Neltharian's Lair put us up to, not item level, but IO of 279. And we're still sitting around an item level of 402 at this point. And the key becomes a 9 Neltharus, something that I was really eager to kind of get into, and this time I was a little bit more aware of Incorporeal. The problem with Rogues and Incorporeal is, as the Rogues may be known as the class with a lot of CC, they don't have much good CC to just permanently deal with Incorporeal, right? Blind has a 2-minute cooldown. Aside from that, it's a lot of short-term CC stuns. They've got a lot of tools in their kit to get a stun out, but it just doesn't last. So as for something to just deal with the affix, rogues really aren't that great at it. Two things I noticed when we started this Neltharus was, number one, leeching strikes was a thing, and it's a passive that rogues get. Now, one of the things that I've tried to do is read all the rogue talents and everything that I was taking, but there's a lot to learn, a lot to memorize. And of course, it's not like this is the only spec that I play, but one of the things that was kind of driving me nuts was, why don't I always have this? And I learned that when rogues phase or go into a different group or a different instance, the buff itself goes away and you need to reapply your lethal poisons to be able to get that lethal strike leech back. So one of the things I've started doing is every single dungeon, whether I have 5 minutes or 59 minutes left on my poisons, I reapply my poisons fresh to make sure that I have that buff. The second thing that occurred in this Neltharus was I was blown away by how much damage I was doing at item level 400, and I got really excited, and then I realized that I had invited an augmentation of Ogre to the party. I thought they would just be devastation in a 9. That's just kind of what I thought, but I was really, really happy to see some big numbers. One of the pulls that I see tanks pull in Neltharus decently enough to the point where I get cringe at it. Now again, this is a 9, I understand, but it's the Forge Rot monstrosities. In my brain, I'm always doing a key level a little bit higher than kind of what I think I am, especially in these low level keys. And just seeing this getting pulled always just sends shivers up my spine, like, oh no, why? Don't pull this. They pulse an insane amount of AoE damage most of the time, and I mean most of the time, your healers are going to commit some sort of big healing cooldown to this, and on a tyrannical week, they need every single one of those healing cooldowns for Forge Master, a boss that's coming up very, very quickly, and they're probably not going to have it. Just best to avoid these Forge Rot monstrosities. That key turned into an 11 Underrot, and to end the evening, we ran it. Now, we actually ended up getting very lucky in getting a Shadow Priest who was mount farming the Underrot mount and just haven't been lucky for it, so the run went really, really smooth. But this is where I realized that I'm starting to get to a level of key where I do not know what to do with Deathmark. I don't have 4-piece yet, but I do have 2-piece, but when I do get 4-piece, my nature damage is going to be increased for 30 seconds after Deathmark ends, so this is something that I'm going to need to be using a lot more than I am now, but it's also very hard to judge 2-minute cooldowns in that 5 to 10 level bracket, right? You're seeing a wild west of routes and everything like that, where it's kind of safe just to save it for the boss, and you're like, okay. But now that's not happening. I'm quickly getting to that level where I'm like, okay, I need to start using Deathmark a lot more. Do I just use it on cooldown? What do I do here? And this is where I start thinking to myself, where can I start optimizing? But all in all, the 11 Underrot went really, really well. Of course, we did have, like, you know, a big Shadow Priest helping us out. That was really, really nice. But that ended us at 474 IO for the evening, still hovering around that 402 item level. With the new day comes a new stream, comes new keys. We ended up just plowing through Halls of Infusion +2 just to get some points on the board for that. Nothing really crazy goes out of, whack there. Then we start trying to plug into something else. Nothing's really working. But I had a 14 freehold from that 11 Underrot that we had the other day. So I decided, hey, let's put it up for Q, and we got a group going. This is where I realized I am a little bit out of my depth with the spec, because I just don't quite fully know what I'm doing yet. One of the big problems, like we had just discussed, was Deathmark, but the other one was Thistle Tea. I had it on a spot on my keybinds where I was not using it unless I was very aware that I had no energy at all. But one of the things that Thistle Tea does, aside from replenish your energy, is increase your mastery. And by increasing your mastery, increasing the damage your poisons and bleeds do. So I've been sitting on this for way too much. So one of the things that I decided to do was swap Gouge and Thistle Tea spots on my key bindings, and I've noticed that this has definitely helped a lot. But we did end up getting the 14 freehold timed. Very good there. We went into a Brackenhide Hollow +5. Got some IO there. very, very happy. But then we needed some IO and a +8 Alderman. And this is where I've seen the flavor of the month tanks. Tanks, pull around your party, please. Okay, little PSA. Just because you can live it does not mean that the pull was supposed to happen that way, or that's a good pull. I could literally tell by how the healer was playing and reacting that they were having an absolutely miserable time in this key, okay? Absolutely miserable time. And you were trying to do a +8. They were trying to do all of these weird things that you want to do in like 20 pluses. Bro, it's a +8. Just relax, okay? We want healers to play this game. When we pug for Mythic Plus, we want healers coming into higher keys. And if this is the impression that healers are getting in a +8, they're never going to get into a +18 or a +20. Or very, very rarely. Right? We want people playing this game. And you could tell by the way this person was tanking, they had no care or regard for anyone in the party but themselves. To the point where they were tanking Chrono Lord all the way in a back corner with no room, with three melee DPS in the party who could literally do nothing. Who had to either stand in pools and take damage, or run off to the side and not being able to hit him at all. Earlier in the video, I did say that we ran up my 11 Underrot, and that turned into a 14 Freehold, which then got upgraded as well into a Neltharion's Lair +15, which I decided to drop to +13 because I really just didn't want to deal with Spiteful. My item level is a little low for where we're at. I'm sitting around 409 at this point, 408, and Spitefuls are hitting me really hard, and right now I'm trying to focus on learning the core rotation. So I kind of figured, whatever. The Spiteful Affix starts at 14. Let's just run a couple of 13s in a row and see what happens, right? So we get into a Neltharion's Lair with, we ended up getting a 440 tank that came in. I was assuming Wormcrest farming. Turns out there were someone's alt that I didn't know from Twitch. Kind of not happy about that.
Guys, that's why we have cheated.
Well, you don't know what you don't know. But the end of the run had something that was really funny. The bear tank got a leather belt, crit mastery avoidance, and I was like, oh man, gimme, please. I need it, you're 440, you obviously don't need this gear, it's definitely not for you, right? You don't need it. And then the hunter's like, I'm rolling for it. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about rolling for it? Like, I'm a rogue, I need the leather. Hunters use leather too. Why am I rolling against a hunter for a belt? Oh my fucking Christ. I'm literally arguing with a fucking hunter right now that thinks they use fucking leather. Like, no? No, they don't. Whatever. Here's the screenshot. They admitted they're wrong after they said only dragons use mail. So that was kind of just a funny moment. But then, so we got our IO, we got out, we ended up getting a Mark of Dargul and a Mark of Dargul trinket, which is actually really, really nice, and replaced one of the paracausal trinkets, but we also ended up with that belt. So really, really happy there. That Neltharion's Lair turned into a 13 Neltharus, where I must admit that making the change with Gouge and Thistle Tea over the keybinding spots worked out really, really well for me, and I'm really happy with my performance in that 13 Neltharion's Lair. That key then turned into a Halls of Infusion, and this is where things start going poorly. Things were going okay, and we get to the frog boss, and the tank wasn't quite sure what to do here, because he was getting out of the gulp, and it was getting enraged, and eventually it just kind of killed us. But, you know, we explained to the tank, hey, look, you gotta be in there, make sure that there's something for the gulp to eat, or else he enrages. We get through that boss, not a problem on the second attempt. We go through, And we're dealing with the dragons. Things are kind of okay. Now, this is a weak point of rogues. Rogues really don't have anything to deal with the deep chill that well. We've got Cloak of Shadows, but again, it's a 2-minute cooldown. Rogues just don't have a great way to deal with deep chill, right? You have Cloak of Shadows on a 2-minute cooldown, but that's not great. If there are any ways to help me remove this debuff, please let me know. That's just built into my kit. Am I missing something? I'm very new to this spec. Like I said, I played it a little bit in Shadowlands, and that was about it. So the whole rework with the talent trees and everything, a lot of this is new to me, right? I'm learning as we go along, but this is an area where I found that I struggle bust along the way. But then we get to Frost Boss in a 13 Halls of Infusion, and this is where we find out our healer cannot do this key at all. They are out of their depths. We wipe multiple times, and the Feral Druid ends up leaving, bricking the key finally. The key was already bricked. I mean, it's fine. Somebody just had to leave the key to be able to do that, but to be able to say it was bricked. But one of the things that I've said to myself while doing this is I'm not going to leave my own key or someone else's unless someone does it first. I'm going to just stick it out. So I'm happy the Feral Druid left, but then we get into a 12. So in a 12, I grab a sizable priest at 430 something, a lowly warlock that came with at 380, but I was like, whatever, how bad can they be? That was a big mistake. We ended up grabbing the first healer that we could see, which was a priest and a blood DK, completely forgetting to get a poison dispel. Yeah, that's my bad, by the way. That's really my bad. So one of the key things that we had to do while going up to the Frog Boss and the Frost Boss is make sure that no one got not 10 stacks of poison. Because if you do not know, 10 stacks of the frog poison equals insta-death. Does not matter your item level. You want to make sure that you never get 10 stacks. So we skirted the line, but we did get through it. Then we went through, and then we're starting to do, again, the deep chills, and we go across. We struggle boss through the Frost Boss, but we do end up getting it done. Very difficult. This is a very healer-intensive fight, so this is where I'm trying to use as many CCs as possible, trying to use Feint for as much AoE damage reduction as I can get. Anything that I can do, but rogues really don't have a whole lot. Crimson Vial is insanely lackluster, a 20%, like 5% per second for 4 seconds on a 30-second cooldown is really nothing to write home about. Like 20% max HP, yay, sweet. Like, cool, right? So you have Feint, which is a really good when it's against AoE damage. Cloak of Shadows, obviously super good to have that immunity when you do need it. And Evasion is kind of useless on bosses unless they're really attacking you, because a 100% dodge chance means not a whole lot. But there are some scenarios where it is really good. But we'll talk about those in a future video when I kind of start figuring most of them out. But we do get through it, and we do end up timing this key. But 2 priests in the party. We may have forgotten a poison dispel, but those deep chills. 2 people with mass dispel, not mass dispelling anything. But so this is where I want to talk about deep chill. So, Halls of Infusion, the dragons cast deep chill. This is a movement-based ability, a movement impairing ability. It has an initial hit, and it places a dot on the party. Anything that you have that removes roots and snares and anything like that also removes deep chill. It can also be mass dispelled. So, if you do not have a mass dispel or someone willing to use mass dispel, you can freedom the dot off. You can also dwarf it, by the way, but you can pretty much dwarf off everything. I know, like, for example, warriors, you can use avatar. Mage, if you're spec'd into the barrier, removes snares and roots and stuff. I'm pretty sure that takes it off. If not, Blink does. Things like that, right? So whatever you can do for that, very good to kind of help you out along the way there. But my god, Deep Chill wrecks your healer, wrecks your party. Help out where you can with that. Warlocks, set your personal teleport somewhere. I know it can be LOS, and there's a few spots that you can get really tricky and just avoid the damage altogether. But if you don't know where those are, set down a portal somewhere, and if you take that deep chill dot damage, just immediately hit your personal portal, it's gone. You're saving your healers a lot of trouble and just being a better player, right? So whatever you can do along the way to help remove those. Freedom is really good, but obviously Mass Dispel is where it's at. I know the higher end keys, they tend to avoid all those dragons, but in the lower end keys, we tend to just run them because it's just easier than doing a mind skip soothe with a bunch of pugs, because skips never really work out with a bunch of pugs in lower keys. But that is where we ended the key. We ended up timing it at 12 halls of Infusion. We did end up timing that key. So we end our week there with that 12 halls of Infusion at 1155 IO and 412 item level. I do live vault openings, but we are going to be omitting the rogue from those live vault openings and keeping that for the videos and things like that. So those will not be part of the Great Vault videos. For those of you that do watch those, this is going to be kept separate. I am not looking forward to Afflicted Week, which is coming next week, because I think that's just going to be miserable, and I don't have anything to help with it. So it's going to be one of those things where trying to plug into anything is going to be just terrible to do, and watching it go off and not being able to do anything is not going to be fun either. But I'm really, really excited for this spec, the potential that it has, and I'm excited to have a lot of fun with it. I hope you have. Thank you for watching until the end, everyone. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and happy stabbing. Bye.